rest of the people that I need to understand my experience. Yeah. And in that moment, I opened up my computer and Netflix was on, and the Surviving Death docuseries appeared on my Netflix page. And I watched it, and the first episode is about near-death experiences. And there was an IANDS conference that was in the first episode. And I heard Mary Neal describe her near-death experience. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's what happened to me, you know, and this woman was talking about it so eloquently and in this beautiful linear fashion. And, you know, it was just so easy to follow her story. And I thought, wow, like, I wonder if it'll ever be like that for me, you know, because in my head, like, everything is twisted around in a million loops and circles. And so I Googled IANDS and I found that they had sharing groups online. This was in December of 2020. So I had already been a year and a half into my experience. I never experienced like going into a spiritual closet. I always felt like very called to be very vocal about what had happened to me. I experienced a major transformation in my life, and I felt like I wanted everyone to know about it. And so I started going to our sharing groups online, which I advocate for like tremendously. If you're looking for spiritual community, if you're interested in the subject matter, we have sharing groups every Thursday and every Sunday, and it's a beautiful community where we get together and we support each other. And we also have theme groups here. So I started going to our sharing groups. They're 90-minute meetings, and I would just hysterically cry the entire 90 minutes. I was like a puddle in these rooms, you know, like I couldn't get any language out. I couldn't even really explain what had happened to me, but I kept hearing all of these people in these groups eloquently describing what had happened to them. And they had so much language for their experiences. And so I just deeply listened. Every once in a while I would share and I would say, oh my God, God rejected me. Why? Why did God reject you? Why do we have to be here? And, and these women and these men and these people in these groups, they really helped me integrate my experience in a way where I didn't feel rejected. I felt like this was a gift. I always thought that I was trying to get back to heaven. And I realized that heaven is here. And for me, heaven is within this organization, as well as my other spiritual communities. That is where I feel the vibration of unconditional love and support. And so I got involved with service right away in 12-step fellowship. It's a big cornerstone of being part of a community, is giving back in service. And so I volunteered to be a facilitator and a moderator for our sharing groups. And I love being of service to this community. I love holding space for other people. It really feels like part of my mission as a spirit. And then I was asked to come on board for the production team for IANDS groups and events. And I started, I do the webinar coordination, and I get to find speakers and allow them to have space, which is such a beautiful gift for me. And now we're conceptualizing this podcast. And, the whole journey, I cannot even explain to you the contrast of my life, who I was before and who I am now. But actually, I would really like to show a picture, if that's okay. I just want to share the screen for a second. I'm going to show you what I looked like 1 month before my awakening and what I look like now, because it's just like the contrast is so vivid. So I'm not sure if it's sharing yet. Can you see it?
Yeah.
There. So this is me on the left. This is about 1 month before my awakening. I'm very strung out on drugs, very gray, very sunken in, completely dead in the eyes. And then this picture on the right is last September. I was asked to share at the IANDS conference in Salt Lake City. And it was just this beautiful opportunity to connect with community. So as I sit here and I tell you about the fact that I've been a part of something, I've watched it go from infancy, just the little spark, just a thought of an idea, and now to watch it rise into maturity and to actually be involved in that whole process. That person before could have never conceived to do anything. And the fact that this is all from spiritual awakening, and it's all from integration of the spiritual experience. And I would not have been able to integrate my spiritual experience without the support of IANDS. And just, like the vulnerability of the people that we have in our community is amazing. So the conception of this podcast is to really branch out to a different type of consumer, or, just like a different type of person. The younger generation, I'm not too young, but like, I feel like I'm a part of a younger generation. And I really feel that awakening and spiritual awareness is happening on a mass scale. I just don't see any reason why it would have happened to me if it wasn't happening on some large scale. And so, I'd like to give space, and IANDS would like to give space for people who have never shared their experience before to be able to come onto this podcast and be able to share, and not just limited to first-time shares, but, to experiencers, researchers, people who are teachers of different, kinds of sacred texts, and, just like this beautiful opportunity to expand our base as an organization and, feel very inclusive and diverse. And I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of something like that. Like at IANDS, we have like a lot of heavy hitters, like we have conferences every year, and we have these people who have written books, and they're so eloquent, and they share about their experiences, and they seem very like enlightened and wonderful and, eloquent. But they all started as somebody who had never shared their experience before. They all started as people who needed support from others to believe that they could dream and that they could get their information out there into the collective. And I'm so grateful that IANDS has given me an opportunity to be a part of something so big. And I can't wait to see what happens. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for letting me share.
Well, we're very, very blessed to have you as part of the organization. And I'm blessed to know you personally, to have given you a hug at the conference. That was awesome. That's where the best parts of the conference is, to get to give each other real life hugs. Speaking of which, little advertisement, the next conference will be in the Washington, D.C. area, as usual, the week leading into and including Labor Day weekend. So for those of you on the East Coast, it'll be a much easier trip than going out to Salt Lake City like last time, which was an awesome place. And we had a really great conference this year. So, I'd love to hear more about life planning. I believe you said in another interview that you were like, at first you were like, I did not sign up for this. This is way harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm not going back there. Say some more about that, please.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I grew up in like a very chaotic, dysfunctional home. I've experienced a myriad of abuses in my life, sexual trauma, my parents' death. They both took their own lives due to their addiction in 2007. And, I've experienced a lot of very deep hardship in my life. And so when I had this spiritual experience, like I said, I was an atheist. I didn't really know what was going on. I thought I had just broke my brain from doing too many drugs, but they assured me that I was in the right place and that I was there to learn something. And so I just went with it because I didn't have any choice. I just thought, well, this trip is crazy, and, so I was shown my pre-birth planning, and I was downloaded with so much information, and yeah, I'll take you through what that sort of looked like and what I've taken away from it. So in my mind, everything kind of seemed like a video game to me. And there was this man, he was wearing a plaid blazer and a fedora, and he was standing inside of what looked like a grocery store. And he said, okay, pick your life. And this was my soul before this incarnation. And so I had been downloaded with the fact that I was on a mission as a spiritual soldier to assist the collective in awakening. And so I needed to experience a lot of contrast for that. And so, I'm going through this grocery store, and it looks like there's cereal boxes on these shelves. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to Earth. I'm really going to Earth. And I start grabbing all these boxes, and I'm like, sexual trauma, like poverty, addiction, like all of these very adverse things, like I want to be a woman. I want to be born here. I want to be white, this and that, like all of these different things. And then there was some things in the this cart was like overflowed with these perceived boxes. And then there was some some things in the cart that I hadn't gotten to yet in my life, like recovery, overcoming, triumph, community, communication, like beautiful things that I could have never perceived I would actually get a chance to experience in my life. And so in the moment of being downloaded with this belief, I was not having it. I was like, this is ridiculous. There's no way that anybody would choose the things that I have experienced in my life. And so then they took me through the moments in time when I picked the partners, the members of my hive, that we would have these experiences together. So I saw myself just sort of like as this orb of light. There was really nothing physical to see, coming up to another orb and making an agreement that we would play these roles in each other's lives, not just with the trauma that I experienced in my life, but I also saw the moments when I would be the abuser in people's storylines. Like my story is rich with contrast, not only from my own victim mentality that I lived in, but from the fact that I victimized many people in my life as well. And I am a testimony to transformation. And if transformation is possible for me, it's possible for literally anybody. So being downloaded with this belief, it was, like I said, just total freedom. Like 2 tons of garbage had come off my back. Like I was no longer a victim. I was actually a divine co-creator of my experience. And how could this be, And there were some other things that I was downloaded with as far as pre-birth goes. And that was that I am a spiritual soldier. And I saw myself kind of look like a spaceship. The best way that I can describe it is like the Gravitron ride at carnivals. If anybody can remember that, it looks like a spaceship, and you go inside and it spins really, really, really fast, and you can throw yourself against the walls and you can flip upside down because there's no gravity inside of it. And the way that I perceived it was that I had walked out of one of these walls and I was standing in the center of this what felt like a spaceship. And I was being told that I was part of a spiritual army and that we were sent here to liberate Earth. And I perceived like thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of other souls there with me. And, I really felt like I was home when I was in that space. It was this beautiful sense of reunion. Like I had finally felt safe. I had never once felt safe being a human. Never once had I felt loved, comforted, safe, secure. And when I entered the space of heaven, that's all that I felt, was just like this vibration of home, reunion, safety. And so I refused to come back. Like they're downloading me with all these beliefs. And I'm like, okay, thank you for showing me this cool story, but like, I'm home, I'm going to chill out. Where's the couch? Give me some popcorn. Like I'll watch from here. And they said, no, you signed up, like you have to finish. And kind of felt like I was standing in front of a table. I don't like using the word jury because it sounds condemning. There is no condemnation in eternity, but it did feel like people in charge. And they were thumbing through a book and they said, your book is not nearly finished yet. And I said, my book is finished. Like I'm done. I said, you guys don't tell us what Earth is actually going to be like. It's so dense. It's bizarre. It's dark. There's no way. I just can't go back. And they said, you have to. And so I transformed into like this small child. I was stomping my hands and my feet on the ground, throwing a tantrum. Please don't. No, I won't do it. And they said, you're part of this army, like the first part of your life was like boot camp. And the second half is going to be carrying out your mission. It's not going to be nearly as challenging. Trust us. And I was like, I do not trust you. And I imagine it's probably what like being an actual soldier is like, boot camp is like, you picture it like doing push-ups in the mud and like someone screaming in your face and it's raining and like, it's probably super challenging. And I'm sure that when you get a chance to go home and see your family, you don't want to go back to the army, Right. And, I said, look, you guys have all of these other soldiers, like you don't need me, like I felt like I was around tens of thousands of other souls. And they said, no, we need you, And I said, well, listen, I'll go back if this is like the only choice that you're giving me, but like, I will not go back into her. And I could see my body outside myself. And I said, listen, she's glitched. She needs way too much healing. There is no way to achieve that. And so they said, okay, we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And so that, again, it looked like a video game. They showed me like this 3D avatar, this little baby, and then they showed me all of her stats. And they showed me her gender, her ethnicity, where she would be born, her parents, her adversity, her mission, her purpose. And this baby had even deeper levels of adversity than myself. And I mean, I had experienced so much in my life, and I just threw my, like figurative hands up in the air. And I said, oof, I definitely can't start from zero. If this is the only choice that I have, I guess I'll go back into her. And they said, trust us, it's not going to be the way that you think it is, And when I came back from my experience, I just wrote it off as drug-induced psychosis, like I was an atheist, I was a drug addict, like this was not part of my picture. And I just went about my life, and the universe just made it totally impossible for me to stay on that path. I mean, like when I say divine synchronicities were taking place to shove me into a whole nother lane on the highway, it was just, everything was so divinely inspired. It was terrifying, like it really felt like there was some invisible force, like painting the picture as it was happening. And yeah, like through the signs and synchronicities, like I said, I found myself in a rehab and started integrating my experience. And it all led, to this moment right now, like where we get to have this conversation with each other, and we're launching this conception together. And man, like I would have never thought that like my pain had purpose in my life, but now I see that it does. And yeah, that level of freedom and transformation is just, well, it's inspiring,
Well, thank you for your mission here. I think there's more than a few folks in the near-death community who feel the same way in a lot of ways. I think it's pretty much universal. There's a few folks who choose to come back because of certain obligations they feel to children. Usually, I think they feel like they have to come back to help raise their family. But that's an amazing story. So tell us a little bit about some of the synchronicities. You were, it's crazy when you get into the right mode, excuse me, and you're tuned in and you're going with the flow, and then the universe says, all right, here we go. And things just start happening. Tell us a little bit about some of those.
So, well, I'll tell you about the synchronicities that led me onto the spiritual path, because like I said, I came from darkness and unawareness. And so, when I came back from my experience, all the drug dealers, like my life was immersed in drugs. I mean, like there really are no, like you just saw the picture. That's the only way that I can describe it. Like my life was darkness and depravity. And so, like I used drugs all day, every day. And all the drug dealers that I had been dealing with for over a decade all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. So like I would call up my dealer and he'd be like, listen, I found Jesus. I want to be a good father. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Bye, click. And then I'd call the next one and they'd say the same thing to me. And these people did not know each other. These people were strangers, And so then I had no way to get drugs, and drugs just began to not work. And I found myself on a train. I had no destination. I was lost, broken, battered, confused, just completely like bewildered with what had happened to my life, or I had no idea what was going on. And I had no destination when I stepped onto this train. I just was like, I don't know, And I sat down and this man appeared across from me and he was wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice in my head and it said, that's your path. Follow him to a meeting. And that was on June 1st, 2019. And I've been clean and sober ever since. So it's about, 2.5 months after my awakening experience that I was still trying to live the life that I was living. And then the universe just was like, shoving me in this different direction. And I went to a few more meetings over the next couple of days thinking that this is what I had to do. And the only thing that I was really trying to do was get back to heaven. So, I had this very transformative experience and I thought, all I want to do is go back to that space. What do I have to do? Okay, this voice in my head says I have to follow this man to a meeting. Okay, I'll do that. I'll go to another meeting the next day. That's what they say to do. And so I kept going to meetings and I went to a women's meeting and, I looked messed up. And this woman grabbed me as I walked in the room and she whispered in my ear and she held me so tight. And she said, you are deserving of all of the love in the universe. And in that moment, I felt heaven again. And I just melted into this stranger. I melted into her arms. And I just thought for 1 second, like, maybe I am worthy. You know, like I definitely didn't feel worthy of love. You know, I had no evidence to tell me that I was worthy of anything. But, you know, like this felt like another sign. And I went to another meeting the next day, and I found myself in a meeting of 70 people. And it really felt like every person was sharing directly to me. Like you go around the room and you talk about where you're at. And it just felt like every person had a message from source for my ears. And I just thought like, oh my God, I don't know how to be a person. You know, like I'm listening to these people, they're telling me that I can live a different life, but I don't know how to do that. And I know that I can ask them for help, but like, I can't ask these strangers to help me, you know, like I'm not built that way. And then I heard a voice and it said to turn my head to the right. And sitting 2 seats away from me was the program director of a long-term therapeutic community here in Brooklyn, where I live. You know, like I'm sitting in a meeting of 70 people, and I just so happened to be sitting right next to a woman whose life's purpose, passion, and profession is teaching women how to be women again after the use of drugs and alcohol. And I just knew that it was another sign. And so I was like working up my courage the whole meeting to talk to her after and like beg her for help. And so like I'm sitting in the meeting and I'm like psyching myself up and I'm like, you can do this. Like you're going to have a new life. All right. This is what God wants for you, you know? And I'm just like really in my head and I'm like, you know, like clenching my fists and I'm like, I know that I can do this, you know? And so the meeting ends and I walk over to where she is and she was gone. She left early and I felt totally defeated. But, you know, I had a plan. I was going to call there. And so I went on the bus to go home. And as I stepped onto the bus, that woman was sitting right there. She left the meeting early and was somehow on the exact same bus as me. And I ran up to her totally manic. And I was like, oh my God, I think that you're an angel. You're sent to earth. You're here for me. I want to talk to you inside, but you're already gone. And now here you are. Oh my goodness. Can you please help me? And she said yes, that she would help and that they could help. And yeah, that's like where my journey began, you know, and the signs and synchronicities that have flooded my life ever since my awareness opened up in those moments has just been so overwhelming. Like I know deep within every fiber of my being that I am spiritually supported. And if I am, I know that everyone else is, you know?
Yeah.
So thanks for letting me share that.
That was awesome. Let's take a couple questions from the audience here. First of all, Mark Brooks wants to know, are you going to go to the 2023 conference in Washington? Of course you are.
I will be there. Yes. Yeah. I will say, you know, I've never experienced a conference before, and I went to the one last year and I was blessed enough to be asked to speak. And I walked into this hotel and I thought, whoa, what is that feeling? You know, like I couldn't place the feeling that I was having like in my body. And I realized after being there for a couple of hours that I was in a space with nearly 600 other people who have no fear of death. And it was like the most beautiful like energy there, you know, like it was, yeah, you can't keep me away from these conferences moving forward. I will definitely be there.
Awesome. This one's from Kent. Can you describe how exactly you now have the ability to connect with spirits or spirit guides that you previously weren't able to? And your work is brilliant, Betty. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the way that I connected in the beginning was I was so open to anything, you know, and Wayne Dyer has a quote, when I believe it, I'll see it. And I live my life by that. So if I believe that I'm eternally supported by angels and guides and, you know, like all things spiritual and metaphysical, then I will experience that in my life. You know, like for me, everything starts with a thought. And I see how my thoughts really do shape my reality. So like before I had a thought, I'm a sex worker, I'm a drug addict, I'm impoverished, I'm homeless. And my reality reflected that. I was all of those things. And today I just switch my thoughts around. I say, I'm an abundant individual. I have a home, I have a community. My life has purpose and passion inside of it. And because I utilize those thoughts, that's how my life is. So if I just affirm, like, I have the support of my guides, I can call on archangels for healing and guidance. that's what my experience is today. It doesn't have to be like super complicated. I mean, in my experience anyway, you know, like I'm a very complicated person, but I realize that everything around me is actually quite simple.
Love it. Love it. This one's from Steve. OMG, like I wanted to go home, but no way they would let me leave. No option allowed for leaving, neither self-inflicted nor others allowed to stop my mission. I guess that's more of a statement. Here's one from Chris. What's your first plan of action after being elected president? You rock.
Chris, I love you. Chris is one of my friends from my Bahai community. So grateful for you.
Oh, that's right. I heard that you were interested in Bahai. In my broad survey of all things spiritual and esoteric and bizarre, the Bahai faith seems to be the most loving one out there. Do you want to say a few words?
I agree. Yeah. So I'm not a Bahai myself. And that's the most beautiful part about the Bahai community is that they're very welcoming of all faiths, beliefs, religions, diversity. Like it's such a beautiful community. So I go to a group on Saturdays. It's called Meaningful Conversations. And it's exactly what we do. We read a little bit of their writings, of the Bahai writings, and then we just have a conscious conversation about it. And it's amazing, you know, like, so the Baha'is have a prophet from the 1800s, and the scripture that was written is so relevant for what's happening in today's collective, you know, and it's a message of unity. And it's a message of community and cooperation. And yeah, for me, I can't see any fault in something like that.
Yeah. And they have an absolutely gorgeous temple or compound in Tel Aviv. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been to Israel a few times and we got to see that. And that was my main introduction to Bahai. And Baha'u'llah, is that how you say it?
You know what? I'm not even going to pretend like I know how to say it, but that's pretty close, I think.
All right. So let's, you mentioned, I don't know how many thousands of soldiers. And I heard you mention in another place, lifting this world from 3D to 5D. Can you tell us what you think that means?
So for me, the idea of ascension, you know, is just a shift in thought. It's a shift in the way that I think, you know, like I'll put it that way. So like when I first heard the word ascension, and my conception of what it was before is not what it is today. And I'm sure that it will continue to grow and evolve and change as I continue to do those things as well. But for me, it's switching the thought, you know, like a third dimensional level of thinking in my life is lack, loss, grief, fear, darkness, depravity. A fifth dimensional level of thinking is completely aligned with spirit, growth, light, love, you know, like just the contrast of it. Mm-hmm. So that's how I perceive it. And, you know, like, I just think that being more spiritually attuned is sort of like what this shift is going to look like for the collective.
And we are on the leading edge, it seems, for better or for worse, crawling through the mud. Well, before now you're out of the mud. So you mentioned in one of the interviews, seeing Matrix code. Yeah. Matrix is like my favorite movie. It's got so many things that I think are indicative of what's really going on. Tell us about Matrix code.
Sure, I will. Yeah, when I first had my awakening, I was out, like when the awakening started to take place, I was outside, and the fabric of creation just started disintegrating before my eyes. So I was stuck in a loop. I would like walk to the corner. I was heading home because like I realized that something was going on. I got to the corner and it said Madison and Stuyvesant on the street signs. And then I went to the next corner and it said Madison and Stuyvesant again, and the next corner again. And so it was like I was stuck inside of this loop. And then the whole world got washed in the brightest white light that I could ever perceive. And then I watched all of the buildings crumble to the ground, and all that was left was the green lines of matrix code that make them up. And that was the moment when I realized that reality is not what I think it is. Like, what I perceive that I see around me is not what is actual truth. And so it was just kind of like a deconstruction of a belief system that was going on in the beginning of my awakening.
Mm. So we're really exploring the extraordinary here, huh?
Yeah, and I think that just to kind of tie it back to like why we're here, right? We're talking about this podcast conception, a lot of people hear about IANDS, and IANDS stands for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And it has progressed and evolved in time. Like Daniel shared in the beginning, it's been an organization for over 40 years. And, we're interested in all mystical experiences. Like I heard somebody say in a meeting the other day, we want to make the paranormal normal, or like the supernatural natural. Like I want to make the divine digestible. Like I want it to be for all different kinds of, like just the level of, like who spirituality can touch is every living conscious being. And so, after death communication, spiritual teachings, spiritually transformative experiences, different kinds of awakenings, simulation theory. I know that's something that's very big in the collective right now. Signs, synchronicities, symbols. I'm really looking forward to giving space to people who if you don't think that you have anything to share, I want to give you that space, because I bet that you have something to share. If you're not sure how to construct your story because it feels like a bunch of mixed up puzzle pieces in your mind, I would love to be that person to help you construct like a great story to be able to have like an impactful tell, and anyway, yeah, that's just to tie it back together.
Love it. So bibliomancy. I love when wonderful synchronicities happen. For me, it's just everywhere. And I also like when I see certain sequences of numbers. For me, that's been something for a long time. And whenever I see 111 or 1111 or 222, I'll be like, okay, that's my guides going, we're with you, we're behind you. Little synchronicities. And then there's the bigger ones, like you think about something and something happens the next second or the next day. Do you want to talk about some of those?
Sure, yes. I just want to acknowledge everybody on YouTube. I'm just looking at the comments and I see that Teresa is there. Hi, Teresa and August and Amor. I acknowledge all of you. So grateful that you're joining us.
Is YouTube working?
It is working. Yeah,
awesome.
We're on there. I see us.
Awesome. I almost killed it because I started it and I thought, and my side's telling me it's not happening. So if you could read the YouTube comments for us, so that would be awesome.
I've had some experiences with some beautiful synchronicities. I'll try to share some of those stories real quick, but the first time that numbers ever came into my awareness, like again, I'm living in spiritual unawareness, totally dark, depraved, and completely strung out on drugs. And I was at a portable charging station. We have those in New York. And it seemed like my phone was in a constant state of death, probably because I was in a constant state of death. And I'm standing at a charging station with my phone plugged in, and I realized that I have an 8% charge on my phone. It's 8:08 p.m. and I'm looking at my bank account and it has $88.88 in it. And I thought, whoa, that is so weird. I didn't know what it meant. I just thought, wow, that's bizarre. And then
we're definitely living in a simulation when that stuff happens.
Definitely. 8 days later, I met this man and his life path number is 8 in numerology. And then I found out that my life path number is also 8 in numerology. And if you're unfamiliar with numerology, it's basically like astrology, but with numbers, and each number has a different significance, the same way that each astrological sign has a different significance. And that was the first time that the world of numbers opened up to me. And now I use angel numbers to discern most things in my life. And and just another quick cool sort of synchronicity story with bibliomancy being involved, which I love that word. I didn't know that it was a word that existed. I realize some other people don't know that that word exists, but they utilize that tool as well. So, yeah, I had asked the universe for a sign about a situation. And it was about, I was like, I wanted to date this guy. I was like, oh my God, is this guy for my highest good? Tell me, universe, you know? And this was the lesson where I found out that highest good doesn't necessarily mean what I think it means, right? Like my human thinks highest good means like love of my life, the father of my children, the person who's going to buy me a house and like give me the life that I want. But in reality, highest good could mean this is the person that's going to help you complete a soul lesson. And that's what happened with me. And the soul lesson was one of rejection and abandonment. So, but, you know, completed. Thank you. Check that one off. So I asked the universe for a sign. And, you know, I was like reading this book, Gabrielle Bernstein's book, The Universe Has Your Back. It taught me how to manifest my reality. And it says to ask the universe a sign, go with whatever the first thing that pops in your head is. And if it's for your highest good, it'll manifest within 24 hours. And the first sign that popped into my head was a squirrel. And this was like Christmas week. I live in New York. There was snow all over the ground. It was like disgusting outside. And I was like, well, I'm never going to see a squirrel. The squirrels are all gone, you know, like, you know what? I'm going to forget this exercise because I want to do what I want to do. I'm going to go see the guy. I'm just going to like go with my intuition. And that's it. And so I'm walking to this guy's house and I'm watching the snow crunch underneath my feet. And as I walk up to his building, a squirrel runs right across my feet and goes up this tree. And so I'm looking at the squirrel on this tree trunk and I have my headphones in my ears and it's like a song about soulmates. And it was like this whole little movie was taking place. And like, I had the spiritual sign, I had the soundtrack, and then I look across the street and the man is standing outside. And so like, there's my leading man and this whole little story unfolded. And I was like, whoa, this is beautiful. You know, I didn't know that things like that could happen. And so the next day I'm walking down the street and, you know, like I'm in my little bubble of like, you know, synchronicity and love and light, thinking that the universe really supports me. And I see this book on top of a mailbox. And it was just like out there for somebody to take. And I just had this very deep feeling of intuition that it was there specifically for me. And so I pick up the book and I open it up to a random page. And the title of the chapter that I opened up the book to was entitled The Squirrel. And it was like these huge letters right in my face. And I'm like, what is this? This could not be real. My brain explodes. It melts out of my ears. I fall into a puddle on the ground. I'm like, you know, just forget it. And that's not it. You know, like the next day after that, I'm walking down the street again. And, you know, like I said, it was winter. There's no squirrels out in New York in the winter. And I walked past this lamp post, and on the bottom of a lamp post was this gigantic sticker of a squirrel. And I was like, whoa, you know, like, so for me, I wanted to give up on the whole idea of manifesting this sign because I believed that the universe would not show me a squirrel because I thought that it had to be an actual physical squirrel. But the universe supported me. And like I said, you know, like I thought that it was because I was supposed to be with this person or whatever it was. That was not the case. It was a beautiful soul lesson and the completion of a karmic loop for me in my own journey. Because, you know, like I've found that in my journey, it's not about other people. It's about the evolvement of myself as a spirit. I am creating everything around me. And so as I heal myself, my universe around me changes. And it's brought me to this point right here where everything feels very aligned, you know?
That's so awesome. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Tell me we're not living in a simulation. So tell us a little bit about how you envision the podcast and how many episodes, you know, per week or month, or is it going to be daily?
So well, I wish I had space to do that. I would love to. So when we started with the conception of this idea as a team, and I just like want to give a shout out to everybody who helped with this conceptualization, for the people on IANDS groups and events who believed that I would do a good job being the host. I can't believe people believe in me. It's totally mind boggling. It's amazing. But yeah, Daniel had a big part in it. Dean, Angela. We had some Lorelei, totally amazing. Thank you so much. And then we had some outside help from some people in our community who have their own podcasts. Kat with Third Eye Salon and Darren with Seeking Eye, and they really helped us come up with what it is to have a podcast and like what the vision for IANDS was going to be. So when we first started conceptualizing it, we were talking about doing it once a month. Didn't really know if anybody would be interested in it, but just from posting this event that we're doing now and posting it on my social media, I've already been, like overwhelmed with at least 100 people that are interested in taking part in this. And it sets my spirit on fire. I mean, like, I am so excited. So I'm hoping that we'll have space to maybe have it out at least once a week, if not more. I mean, like, I have a regular job and a regular life as well. I would love to make this like my only thing that I do. But for the time being, I'm called to be in many different situations at once. And so, I'm really looking forward to connecting with everybody that's already reached out and anybody that wants to. We'll put the information in the chat, but explore the extraordinary podcast at gmail.com. And from there, you'll be sent a submission form to share a little bit about your story and why you'd like to be on the podcast. So hopefully the frequency will be weekly, and it'll probably be like a midweek release. It's going to be released on our YouTube at IANDS Videos, and it'll also be on all streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and things like that. And our first guest is going to be Lorelei Drack, who is a huge part of the IANDS groups and events community. And she is my soul sister and such a beautiful member of my soul family and has an amazing story. And I'm so excited to be able to present that as our kickoff to this project.
Awesome. We have some comments here. Quote, "The fabric of creation" were the exact words I heard also 24 years ago. Awesome. And you are an amazing bright light. And there's a ton of stuff going on YouTube. Maybe you might see something on there that catches your attention.
Yeah, I just see that Chris had mentioned that there's a lot of diversity inside of the near-death experience, such as some people see a tunnel, some people see a light, some people are greeted by loved ones that have passed on, and others don't experience that. And he's just asking, what do you think causes such diversity? Do you want to take this one, Daniel?
I think it's because we're so different and individual as it is. I mean, you think your life is like everybody else? No, there are all these other people around you having these incredibly different and diverse experiences of life on Earth. You ask 5 people, what is life on Earth like? You're going to get very different answers, and some are going to have good experiences and some are going to have not so good experiences. Another example I use is if you asked somebody to describe a tree and somebody lived in the tropics, they're going to describe palm trees. If somebody lives in the Antarctic, they're going to describe pine trees. They're all trees, they're all experiences, but there are many different kinds. So that's my take on the differences. And the really tricky question, one of the really tricky questions is, why do some people have distressing elements to their experiences? And I'll put a plug in for the monthly distressing, or as we're now calling them, dual NDE experiences. That's on, I believe, the second Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we welcome those who've had distressing or dual experiences to join us and share. And we just have to be accepting of the differences. Even individuals, some come back and their beliefs differ from others who come back. Although generally there's a lot of similarity, there are some differences, and we're all still human. We all still have our own take and perspective, and that's the way it was meant to be, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, we all see the world through different lenses, and just depending on who you are and what all of the things that have made you. I think, like I said, in my experience, I really perceived everything as a video game. And I think that has a lot to do with the generation that I grew up in. And that's the lens that I see things through. And yeah, somebody had actually mentioned in the YouTube chat as well, they had mentioned something about religion. Did I in my experience, did I experience anything around religion? And just what Daniel just said as well, like some people come back with very strong beliefs towards certain religious beliefs. For me, it's been about getting to know what all of the religions are about and finding the underlying truth. And for me, that truth is kindness and unconditional love. And I get to cherry pick things out of each sacred text and faith and design my own spirituality around it. For me, that's the definition of spirituality. And I'm really grateful that, I have the use of my cognitive sense. And I exercise the spiritual principle of being open-minded so that I can have that shift and evolve with me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're getting towards the end here, folks. If you have anything you'd like to say, I see, thanks, Daniel and Betty. Absolutely beautiful time. Join us this afternoon, Betty says. We have, yes. My friend Gina says, wouldn't it be great to start a meaningful conversations in community, sharing and holding space for others to come together? And that's what IANDS sharing groups is all about, and IANDS groups and events are all about. Here's one from Steve. I see the differences of NDEs and STEs as one experiences in a way that communicates to you. Yeah, there's so much, the universe is so large. How could it be pulled down to one set of experiences? We think with the tiny brain, we have to think with the universal consciousness. All right.
Yeah.
Any final?
Well, I just say that Dean wrote in the chat, could you explain what the term collective means to you? And to me, collective is about the oneness of all things. So when I think of the collective, I think of the red and white blood cells of the universe, that being us. And yeah, for me, the collective, the power of these are the driving forces of the thought that shapes the world. Like there's a majority of thought that creates our experience. And for me, that collective is shifting. And yeah, just as far as final thoughts, I'm really grateful for everybody that showed up on YouTube and here with us at IANDS groups and events. Again, I strongly advocate for our sharing groups. It's where I found my soul family. It's where I found all of the language for my experience. And you don't have to be an experiencer to come to our sharing groups. You also don't have to be an experiencer to be on our podcast. If you think that you have a story that's worth sharing with the collective and it's somehow puts you on a spiritual path in some way, shape, or form, please feel free to reach out. We're not in this little box of like one thing. We're really trying to expand and be completely inclusive to all mystical experiences. And again, yeah, I'm so grateful to share this very vulnerable piece of myself and my journey with you. Being downloaded with my pre-birth planning, this is my most sacred art. As a soul, I chose to write the story of this human that I reside with, and so to be able to share it, I share my most sacred art with you, and I look forward to having all of you share back to me and fill me up and this community with some texture and color. So yeah, thank you so much.
That's awesome. So we've had close to 100 people joining this here now. After the fact, if anybody's looking for it, YouTube's a little weird. They've got videos as a tab, and there's another one called Live. You have to look in a different place for the live events, although we may publish another version of this. And if you are part of the community of folks who are immersed in NDEs because it makes you feel good and it feels right to you, as opposed to perhaps say some the more constrained religious beliefs, please do consider donating to help support IANDS groups and events, and do consider joining the IANDS organization at iands.org, IANDS.org. We'd love to have you as a member, and we'll see you all on the groups. We have sharing groups on a regular basis, Sunday morning at 10 Eastern and Sunday evening at 8, I believe. And then we have some other periodic events as well. So check it all out at isgo.iands.org. Love you, Betty. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks
This
so
has been
much.
awesome. And love you all out there too. God bless.